You've probably vacuumed in the last week, maybe today, and the entire point of doing it is to take the dust out of your home. Here's what almost nobody tells you. For a period after you finish, the air in that room can be worse than before you started. Not dustier, and you did pick up the dust. Worse, with something you cannot see, cannot smell, and cannot feel, that goes through your lungs, crosses into your bloodstream, and travels to your organs. Not metaphorically, physically. There are particles small enough to pass out of your lungs and into your blood the same way oxygen does, and your vacuum is a source of them. Researchers tested 21 vacuum cleaners from 11 manufacturers. Brand new machines and machines 22 years old. Cheap models and ones costing nearly $800. Every single one released these particles. And how much they released had almost nothing to do with the price. This is the story of a kind of pollution most people have never heard of, a number that nearly everyone gets backwards, and a machine in your closet that has been quietly doing the opposite of its job. But to understand why a vacuum can be dangerous, you first need to understand what dust actually is. Because dust is not one thing, and the difference between the two kinds is the entire story. When you look at a beam of sunlight through a window and see specks drifting in it, you're seeing the large kind. Skin flakes, fabric fibers, soil, pollen. Those are typically 10 microns across or bigger. A micron is 1/1,000,000th of a meter. A human hair is around 70 of them wide. Particles that size are heavy. They fall. They settle onto your floor, which is why your floor gets dusty and why vacuuming works at all. And your body is well defended against them. Your nose and throat trap most of what you inhale at that size. It never gets deep. Then there's the other kind. Particles below 1 micron, below 1/10 of a micron. These are called ultrafine particles, and they behave nothing like the dust you can see. They're so light they essentially don't fall. They hang in the air for hours, drifting on the smallest currents in the room. You can't see them in a sunbeam. You can't feel them in your throat. And when you breathe them in, your nose and throat don't catch them at all. They go all the way down, into the deepest part of your lungs, into the tiny air sacs where oxygen crosses into your blood. And a portion of them cross with it. That's the sentence that matters. Once ultrafine particles are in your bloodstream, they don't stay in one place. Research has found they translocate to essentially every organ in the body. They cause more inflammation in the lungs than larger particles do, and they stay in the lungs longer. In the bloodstream, they've been linked to systemic inflammation, damage to the lining of blood vessels, and changes in blood clotting, the specific changes that predispose people to heart disease and high blood pressure. And the rule researchers keep running into is the uncomfortable one. The smaller the particle, the more damage it does. Smaller is worse, which is exactly the opposite of how our intuition works. So where does a vacuum come into this? 2 places. And the first one is not the one you'd expect. The obvious answer is that a vacuum sucks up dust and some of it blows back out. That does happen. But there's a second source, and it's built into the machine itself. Your vacuum has a motor. That motor has brushes. It runs hot, and it spins at enormous speed. Motors like that generate their own ultrafine particles, from brushes wearing down, from heated components, from the electrical process itself, and that stream goes straight out the exhaust into the room you're standing in, whether or not the machine picks up a single speck of dirt. Which is why in that study of 21 vacuums, price and age didn't reliably predict emissions. It was never really about how new your vacuum is. It's about how the exhaust is designed and how well the whole machine is sealed. Which brings us to the number everyone gets backwards. You've seen HEPA on the box, and you've probably heard, or read, or been told confidently by someone, that a HEPA filter filters down to 0.3 microns. Which sounds like it means anything smaller than that gets through. That's not what it means. It's almost the exact opposite. The 0.3 micron figure is what's called the most penetrating particle size. It is the single hardest particle size for a filter to catch. Not the smallest it can catch, the hardest. Here's why. Filters capture particles 3 different ways. Large particles have momentum, so when the air curves around a fiber, they can't follow it. They slam straight in. That's impaction. Mid-sized particles do follow the airflow but brush against fibers as they pass. That's interception. And then there's the third one for the very smallest particles. Anything below about 1/10 of a micron is so light that individual air molecules knock it around. It doesn't travel in a straight line at all. It zigzags violently and randomly. That's called Brownian motion. And it means an ultrafine particle ricochets all over the inside of a filter and is very likely to hit a fiber and stick. That's diffusion. So particles larger than 0.3 microns get caught by impaction. Particles smaller than 0.3 microns get caught by diffusion. And right at 0.3 microns, there's a gap. Too small to carry real momentum, too large to zigzag much. All 3 mechanisms are at their weakest at the same time. That's why filters are tested at that size. It's the worst case. A true HEPA filter captures 99.97% of particles at zero point 0.3 microns, and captures particles both larger and smaller than that at a higher rate than that, which leaves an obvious question. If HEPA filters are genuinely good at catching ultrafine particles, why are they still coming out of the machine? 3 reasons. And this is the real answer to the whole video. The first is bypass. A filter only cleans the air that actually goes through it. If the body of the vacuum isn't fully sealed, air takes the path of least resistance, around the edge of the filter, out through gaps in the housing, straight into the room. This is why the phrase that matters is sealed system. A vacuum can contain a genuine HEPA filter and still vent dirty air around it, because the filter was never the weak point. The casing was. The second is that the motor's exhaust may never reach the filter at all. In many designs, filtration sits between the dust bag and the motor, cleaning the air on the way in while whatever the motor itself produces goes out the back untouched. The third is the labeling. HEPA type, HEPA style, HEPA-like are not HEPA. True. HEPA is a defined standard with a number attached to it. Those look-alike terms exist precisely because the products carrying them aren't held to it. And there's one more, which is the part people do to themselves. Many filters get part of their performance from an electrostatic charge that pulls particles in. That charge degrades over time, and water destroys it. So the person who pulls out their filter, rinses it under the tap, dries it, and puts it back, has often just quietly ruined most of what it was doing. So that's the particles, but there's a second thing inside your vacuum, and it's worse. The same research group looked at what's living in the dust bag. Vacuum bags can hold live bacteria for up to 2 months. The bag is warm, it's dark, and it's packed with organic material. Skin cells, food debris, soil tracked in from outside. It isn't a container, it's a culture medium. Testing of vacuum emissions and bag dust has detected bacteria, including salmonella, along with mold-associated organisms and antibiotic resistance genes. The researchers concluded that vacuum emissions have the potential to spread infectious and sensitizing aerosols indoors, which means every time you switch the machine on, you are pushing air at speed through a 2-month-old bacterial culture and venting it into the room you're standing in. And it's exactly the same 3 weak points: bypass, unfiltered exhaust, degraded filters, that decide whether that stays inside the machine or ends up in the air you're breathing. So what actually helps? Look for a genuinely sealed system, not just the word HEPA on the box. The phrase you want is sealed HEPA, or fully sealed. The filter matters far less than whether all of the air is forced through it. Don't wash a filter unless the manufacturer specifically says it's washable. If you've been rinsing one for years, it probably hasn't been doing much for a long time. Empty the bag or canister outside, not over the kitchen bin, and change it before it's completely full. Open a window while you vacuum and leave it open afterwards. Ultrafine particles stay airborne for hours, and ventilation is the only thing that clears them quickly. And if you have asthma, allergies, or any lung condition, the 20 minutes after you finish vacuuming is the worst air in your home that day. Don't stand in it. So, back to the machine in your closet. A vacuum isn't dangerous because it's a vacuum. It's dangerous because the particles that matter most are the ones you were never able to see. Because the number everybody quotes about filters means the opposite of what they think it means. Because the machine is only as good as its seal, not its filter. And because the bag you've been ignoring has been growing something for 2 months. 0.1 micrometer. Past your nose, past your throat, into your lungs, into your blood. Next time you finish vacuuming and the room looks clean, now you know what's still hanging in the air and why the machine that cleaned your floor just made the air worse. That's the catch.